2024 Board of Selectmen's work session to order at 6:30. Mr. Pinio, do we have a need for non-public?
Madam Chairperson, we do not.
The board needs one under C, reputation. Before we get going, I'd like to kind of emphasize what a work session purpose is, and it's for providing the board members with a more detailed understanding of an issue or permit discussion of issues in greater depth. And right here we're going to be doing Route 28. I would like to suggest that the board that it not take any public comment. This is a work session. We will take no vote. I can place this on the next agenda, which is September 18th. And my reasoning are, one, in which this Board of Selectmen was at the polls from 7:45 to 10:45 last night. The board is going to have a lengthy non-public session to discuss the town manager's evaluation after this meeting. And so that was my reasoning for suggesting it. It's up to the board. I do see we have some people in the audience. I just don't want this meeting to go on a long time tonight. So I'm willing to take comments from the board on whether they want to do that or not. Usually we don't have public comments with a work session. Board members, do you want to, we do have a number of people here. Anybody?
I'll comment. There are some people here, and this one on. Yep. I think I personally wouldn't mind if somebody had something really pertinent to say, and we kept it very short. Maybe limit it to no more than a 5-minute comment. And maybe hold it to once through or something like that. That would at least keep it under control as far as the length of our meeting. But I'd obviously listen to any other board comments on that.
Okay, anybody else? Brian?
So I would say for our regular board meetings, we usually do 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 15 minutes total. The problem is that we're very, very kind to people and let them speak more than that. So I would have no problem tonight using that procedure that we always use. 3 minutes, not more than 15 minutes of total public input.
I'm okay with that.
The 3 minutes, 15?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll take 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 15 minutes. All right, the first item on the agenda, or the only item on the agenda, is New Hampshire DOT Route 28 South Main Street project. Mr. Pinio has gathered some information requested at other board meetings and has a PowerPoint, and with this, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, the goal for tonight is to go over a series of information to answer questions for the Board of Selectmen on the Route 28 project. Some things that you need to consider going forward. New Hampshire DOT would really like for us to weigh in on what the preferred alternative is. And what the mechanism you determine what the preferred alternative is really up to you. So we'll go through a couple of items to begin with. So the agenda for this evening is we'll go through where you are able to locate the New Hampshire DOT documents. We'll go through some issues that have arisen relative to this project regarding municipal electric. Barry's here to be able to speak to that. And then we'll dive into the alternatives for Pickering Corner and discuss those alternatives and have kind of a round table amongst the board on that while the simulations play in the background. And then we'll go through the McManus Road, Pleasant Valley options. Once we complete those options, we will, from that point, transition into the simulations and allow the board the opportunity to discuss in a roundtable what you may want to think about in the future, and then move, hopefully, to public comment and out of the meeting. So where to find the documents, first of all? If you go to the town website and you click on departments, that'll create a drop-down menu. And if you look all the way to the right, there's another yellow arrow where you can go to Public Works. You click on the departments, you click on Public Works, and then it'll bring you to the Public Works webpage. The toolbar to the left, halfway down, you'll see New Hampshire DOT, Route 28 South Main Street project. You click on that icon, and then it brings you to a further link, and again, the yellow arrow points to the term link. You click on that, and it will take you directly to New Hampshire DOT. If you scroll down through this particular page, it gives you all of the New Hampshire DOT meetings that have been held. It will also give you all the presentations, and it will give you the simulations in Center Street, Pickering Corner, and the simulations for McManus Road. So as I think we all learned over the past year, we've got some issues related to municipal electric and some challenges that are going to arise as a result of this. New Hampshire DOT is requesting that we relocate the utility poles, and the purpose of relocating the utility poles is to maintain two-way traffic during road construction. This will require securing of legal easements. Worst case scenario is it'll require the relocation of 70 to 80 utility poles, and the existing system is about halfway through its useful life cycle. So those poles that are removed, they would not be able to be repurposed, and we would see a loss of that investment. It could require two moves if we're not able to secure permanent easements, and we would have multiple electric service transfers to customers, and we have some critical infrastructure along that corridor which could be challenging. It will not result in saving any trees, and Barry will be able to speak to that going forward. Municipal electric pole relocation will require us to have one-way traffic. When they go in and they plant new poles and run new infrastructure on those poles and take the existing poles and infrastructure down, we're going to have to reduce the roadway to one-way traffic for that purpose. Right now, we have an estimated cost of $1.4 million to do that work, and that does not consider the cost of other utilities. With that said, here is a gross overview of a presentation that Barry gave about 3 months ago. This lays out from Pickering Corner to Morrissey's, and then this second slide lays out from Morrissey's to McManus Road. With that said, Steve, could you transition this to Barry's presentation? And Barry's going to go through a series of slides which will explain what municipal electric will have to do.
No.
There we go. Barry Muccio, Director of Operations, Wolfeboro Municipal Electric Department. So as Jim said, we were approached back in, I guess it was late April, early May, from DOT. We recognize this project's been, coming down the line for a couple of years now, anticipated that we'd have to do some pole relocations, figured 10, 20, I guess. When we met initially with them, because DOT really wanted to maintain two-way traffic throughout the project, the construction phase, they informed us that we were going to have to relocate all 80 poles at that time and the full run of wire all the way from Pickering Corner down beyond Pleasant Valley. So as you can imagine, it was a bit of a shocker, and not only did we get requested to move it once, but their request was, you're probably going to have to move it twice. So you're going to have to move to the other side of the road from where the line is now, so we can create a temporary travel lane where the poles are located. And then once we do complete our work in that temporary side of the road, we're going to want you to move back to the other side of the road, and so they can do the same thing. So that's 2 moves. Well, but this was obviously, they're like, give us your thoughts. You know, it was pretty wide open. Nothing's definitive at that time. We sent it out to our engineer, and we really pushed back on the idea that we were going to have to relocate twice. You can imagine the $1.4 million that I have in my budget earmarked for this. It wouldn't quite double with 2 moves, but we would be $2+ million if we had to relocate twice, not to mention the time it would take. And the time would result in one-way traffic during those exercises, because the temporary roadways are not going to be made, or they're not going to be constructed, or the temporary lanes are not going to be constructed while we're doing our utility work. That'll come afterwards. So we're still going to be stuck out there with 1-lane traffic. This is going to have to be done typically, 12 months prior to the DOT's portion to commence. So I took the whole project, and Jim, you're telling me it's the upper,
I think it's the bottom one,
the
Barry.
bottom? Hey, there we go. I took the whole project, I divvied it up into 11 sections, and these 11 sections all have similarities, and the type of condition of relocation. Are we in the right of way? Are we out of the right of way? So they all have sort of common relocation conditions, and that's how I divvied up. I also started at Pleasant Valley and I moved into town. I'm a left to right guy, so don't get confused with the numbering of such. The first section would take us up just before the high school. You can generally see there's probably 5 or 6 poles. It's tough to make out in this, there's a lot going on. Our proposed relocated pole line shows up in the blue, which would be the lower line on the bulk of lines there. The red represents where we are now. So this is what that looks like on the street. We have to move back 10 feet behind the existing pole locations. That space is available. There is right-of-way to do that and keep us within the right-of-way during this section. So section 1 down. It's not too bad. There's nothing really major there for trees in that little area. You see some bittersweet there clogging up one of our pole locations, but relatively minor. Second section, and understand these are just the original conceptual stuff with rotaries or whatever, but that's not defined at this point specifically. This just was our working model. This took us from that McManus Canapatchee Road area up just beyond the second entrance exit of the high school. That area as well, if we can get 10 feet behind the existing pole line, we can stay out of DOT's construction work zone. We can stay within our right-of-way. You can see there's probably going to be a few trees there. There were a bunch of ashes taken down in front of the high school, which probably helped us a bit if we're going to go this route. So nothing too bad. Perhaps that oak right there could stay. It would be trimmed back to its trunk at a minimum, and there's another oak on the far end there. It would be probably the same condition. Next section is from the high school down to the wind drifter. So what we're proposing here, and I'm going to shoot back a little bit. You see the red line over here? This is currently where our pole line crosses Route 28. DOT doesn't like that crossing in that area. The road isn't actually centered within the right-of-way. So what we're proposing to stay out of their way is to continue the pole line on the eastern side of the road here in blue. We would remove it from the western side of the roadway, stay over here. That takes us in front of the golf course. Some of the pine trees there, you can imagine, are going to be affected. And the crossing is now going to take place right here before the wind drifter. Well, what does that look like? You can see these pines right here on the eastern side are going to be affected. We can, once again, though, stay within the right-of-way if we keep it on the eastern side of the road. If we try to relocate and keep it where it is now on the western side, you can see our pole line over there. We're actually going to be 5 feet beyond the right-of-way. So we're going to, if we stay over there, we're going to have to relocate to, in essence, private property. Private property is easements. There's an unknown. And our main focus was try to stay in the right-of-way. It's not to say it's going to be able to take place the whole way down through here, but so that's what you see in that photo is probably the worst of what you're going to have to deal with. We have some pine trees, anything leaning towards the road. It's going to look quite different in that specific area. What it does do for you as a trade-off, though, because we're going to eliminate the pole line on the other side of the road for that section, that is going to allow that to revegetate on the far side, if that's of any, especially down here where you have a visual at the golf course. So we're sort of trading trimming areas, so to speak. The next area is in front of the wind drifter, just after where we cross. So we're going to cross right there, what you see in blue. We're going to terminate right here at this pole in the corner of their parking lot. In this case, that pole, I think there's 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. Fortunately, they can stay exactly where they are. So there's nothing that needs to be relocated there. We feel we can stay out of their construction zone. We're in the right-of-way, and although we may have to replace the poles to go up in the air, we think we can stay there. And so just, if I can, maybe I should have started with this, but understand when we relocate a pole line, we have to completely build the whole thing in a redundant manner because we have people that have power throughout that corridor. It also feeds much of our load to South Main Street. So we have to duplicate exactly what's there: poles, transformers, conductors. If not, you're talking about having extended outages when you transfer customers from the old circuit to the new one. So we're completely building a whole new circuit, wire, poles. If we have to build them in place, typically we'd like to build them over what's there. We'll put in taller poles, get up above it, energize the top circuit, transfer if that's feasible. So that's why I really want to avoid the 2 moves, because then we have to have double the equipment. It has to be all there, all energized, all the services have to be ready. So moving forward, the wind drifter down, it's actually Kingswood Golf's property, but that woods line that sort of lies just beyond them, it's fairly heavily wooded, would be the next section. And this is what that looks like today. I didn't see anything of a major value. There's a lot of bittersweet clogged up in there. There's a dead ash you can see right there in the background. I didn't see anything that I would deem a heritage type tree or something of any major value. Unfortunately, this section right here requires us to relocate the furthest back off the right-of-way. We have to end up back, and here's remnants of the stone wall. We have to actually be in back of that stone wall. So we are going to have to be on private property in this area. And that's going to take, that's obviously going to take the vegetation back behind the stone wall as well. But there's no way to pull it off, get out of the construction zone with only one move, unless we can get easements to be in back of that stone wall there. So this is like the toughest area for us, I would say. From there down, so this is where you come out of the woods line right here. We're just out of the right-of-way on this end of the field. I think this would be 295 South Main, that's 279, so we're right either side of Old Mill Drive. We're just out of the right-of-way here with our blue line, our proposed new line. We do transition back into the right-of-way, right in this area. We're right on the edge of it, and by the time we get down to here, we're fully back within the right-of-way. This is what that area kind of looks like. You can see we've got some trees that are, decorative trees in nature, some spruce. Although you can tell now by it being chopped up there to avoid the wood line now, some of that appearance-wise is already depleted. Now we're at 273, just this side of Old Mill, and we're getting back down to the Public Safety Building. Again, we feel we can get relocated so that we're just inside the right-of-way, and we're going to have to be 8 to 10 feet behind the existing poles you see there, while still maintaining the idea that we're within the right-of-way, though. Public Safety Building to Green Street. Maybe some good news here. We don't feel as though we have to actually relocate. There's probably 6 to 8 poles there. The sidewalk is actually going to transition in the sidewalk's going to be in front of the poles in the final configuration versus to the rear. So we will be behind the sidewalk. I'm assuming, and it's tough to see at this juncture, but I'm assuming that means the whole road is going to take a bit of a shift to get a little more room on the west side of the road. So based on that, we feel we can stay right there. And that, let me go back a bit. I'll go back and I'll show you the section that entails. So that's, you don't see any of the blue lines until you get back down in here, I believe. So this whole strip down here can kind of stay right where it is. Now, we presented this to DOT. This is our conceptual, but they haven't responded back saying, yeah, we like it. No, we don't. So we don't really know their thoughts on this. All I can tell you is this is what we've showed to them where we think we can go, but the feedback's been limited at this juncture. Next section would be from Green Street to Brewster's Anderson Hall, the old Catholic church. You can see the old line used to cross right there in front of Anderson Hall to the other side of the road. And because of the way that road is centered in the right-of-way, what we're proposing is not to cross there. We want to stay on the west side of South Main Street. We want to stay over here. That happens to be the crossing pole. It's a little tough to see what's going on over right there in that photo, but let me. Or did I go the wrong way? That perhaps was the case. Let's try that again. No. Okay, there's the crossing. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's where it crosses now from the west side to the east side. And our intent is to run the poles, continue them down this side. We're going to be behind the sidewalk again, believe it or not. We have to go back a little bit. We're still, ultimate configuration, our poles will be behind the sidewalk. We have a number of trees, Brewster trees in here that would be affected. The good thing about on the west side of the road is the trees actually sit further off the roadway. The trunks are further off the roadway than they are on this side. So I think it would be less noticeable, the trimming on that side is going to go up with 45-foot poles. Now, eventually, the trees are going to grow. Eventually, we're going to have to cut them back. But at this juncture, the pole, the tree lines generally, 15 feet or so back off the pole. So it does buy you a little room there. The next section is that area from Academy Drive back into Pickering Corner. Now you can see this is where we're proposing to cross the road. And what we're going to do is we're going to cross to the existing pole at Three Sisters. This pole stays the same. Everything beyond that stays the same. This is what's there now in red. That's where we hope to stay. And this is sort of what that looks like. We'd be crossing the road and attaching to that pole location from the other side of the road and jogging over. So issues, and that concludes my PowerPoint end of the presentation. I think Jim's gone over some of the issues that are fairly well known. Tree trimming. I don't know how popular these tree trimming events are going to be. There's been a DOT survey of the trees and conditions in those areas for what it's worth. I mean, everybody's got a different idea of what they consider heritage trees. And so easements where we have to be on private property. We don't need temporary easements, we need permanent easements. And we all know there can be some struggle with permanent easements. And then the third thing I look at, and I think Jim mentioned it as well, we still have to have a lane closed while we're doing our work. So the whole idea that they want to maintain two-way traffic throughout the process, well, it doesn't apply to us. So you're going to be stuck with one-way traffic for months.
Months, that's what I was asking.
I think it's going to be months because this hasn't even been shown to our partners in crime, the phone company who own 50% of these, and they're not exactly thrilled with showing them yet. They want to. So
Very generally, at the telephone company and the cable company take forever to come and attach and get rid of our old pole. Is there any leverage to get that to happen, or are we just going to have to wait until that happens so we could have it traffic one way more than once? Will be when you move the electric and then when they move the utilities.
So we each all have to take our own we take the top of the pole gets moved first, that's us.
Okay.
Then we have our friends from the phone and cable and all the other carriers who are in between us and phone need to do their thing, and then phone is the last person on the pole. I will tell you, DOT carries a lot more leverage than the town of Wolfeboro. We all exist out there on their property, basically at their will. So we don't have permanent easements for what's there now. We basically exist at their will, and this is the way they operate in most places. They don't like to get permanent easements for this reason. So now they ask us to move, we have to move. Yeah. They ask phone to move, they ask all parties to move, we have to move. So they'll lean on them, and it'll happen a lot faster than me as a utility or somebody as a homeowner to get them to transfer a pole. And so
So you could do it, you could be down here, then they could stop traffic up there again. We could first have it by the cable and then by the phone. So we could have 3 times on a pole the traffic could be stopped to move everything over.
We actually have 5 separate utilities on
5.
many of those poles, so there'll be 5 separate parties intervening.
Plus, then half of it has to be done a second time, because looking at what you said you were going to be doing, some of the poles will stay, but others will be temporary and will have to be moved, and then you have to move the utilities back again.
We hope not to do that, Ryan, but we don't know. We don't know.
So coming from that world, the utility, the telephone and internet folks aren't going to mess around with relocating infrastructure while you're out doing it. They don't like getting near electricity. They get a little nervous about that. So Linda's point makes good sense. You have, going through this town, just look out the window, you have 4 middle mile, meaning stuff that's coming through this town and going over to Tuftonboro. You got a lot of capacity on the internet side. What is the assumption about who pays?
So DOT absolutely will cover none of this, and there's no grant eligibility of moving as part of the project. So each utility bites the bullet. We're fully have to pay for ours, the phone, everybody has
Is the
to pay for
assumption
their
they'll
own.
pay themselves or send us a bill?
They won't send us a bill. We're not the ones forcing the move. It's DOT. They're not going to cover any of their costs. Each party is going to be responsible for the costs.
I'll put that in the bucket of that's an unknown question. I mean, the telco probably has to comply, but the fiber people may not feel that it's on their nickel to relocate their infrastructure. Telco has to do it because they're a utility, but the fiber people are not. So they may say, I'm not doing it unless somebody pays me. We probably need to suss that
I
out.
think you'll find and we have basically rental agreements with each one of those parties, and we've vetted a lot of that out. So, yeah, they may not want to move on their dime, but
As long as we can just
I think we've got
affirmatively
them
know that
covered.
we're not going to get a bill,
yeah, no, that's.
because it would be a big surprise.
Oh, it would be.
Huge.
But that wouldn't have, I haven't seen that ever in my career. Our contracts are locked in pretty tight of what their details
Okay.
are, what they're responsible for, so.
Just want to minimize the surprises.
Brad?
Yeah, Barry, in a lot of the places here where you're going to be moving your poles, you're going to be getting a lot closer to the edge of the right-of-way line. You're going to have anchors and, ties back onto private property, and some of the easements you're talking about, that they're going to be permanent easements and stuff like that.
Yes, some of them actually will be poles themselves. We haven't actually gone out there and put a layout in place that would tell us where the anchors need to be, where they don't need to be, but you can suspect on a run that long, there will be anchors back on private property. What I know of and informed you of tonight is simply the poles that we know will have to be on private property. The anchors sit back 15, 20 feet beyond where the poles are, so.
Yep, but just another thing public needs to know about, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it would be, we don't ever just set a pole without getting the formal easement and having those recorded. We just don't do that. So all of that stuff will have to come that'll all have to be ironed out. And the DOT is not going to help us on the permanent easement side. They've already told us, we're getting temporary easements for construction. That is the limit of what we're going to be involved with easements, so.
Dave, do you have any questions? So I guess what I hear, one, we want to make sure, and you can check your contract, that there'll be no money for any moving of any utilities back on the town, and you can either look at your things, but get confirmation for DOT. I think the reason, and do you have any kind of time frame on when you think DOT is going to let you know about your plan, because I think at this point, one of the important things for us as the Board of Selectmen is to get the information out to those property owners as soon as we can, and then kind of get a tentative date when it's going to happen so we can do some planning.
You folks may have heard more than I have. I don't know, are they slated to be at a meeting with you folks in the near future? Because we submitted our items, and like I said, we haven't heard anything that says, yeah, we kind of like your idea. No, we don't like your idea. So all I had to go on was the best we had.
Yep.
So I haven't set up anything. I believe, boy, Steve, anything, DOT? No, I don't have a great answer on that one.
Okay.
No.
Do you think they have to have a decision on this town on which option in order for us to get any movement on this?
Option,
For whether we're going to do a roundabout or, enhance or do nothing?
so they are currently planning, it's my understanding, the roundabouts as those are the most complex project at this point. You, as the Board of Selectmen, do have the ability to reduce the scope of that project going forward, but we probably need to get that buttoned up probably by spring of next year. It is my understanding one of the reasons they are doing it this way is because of the permitting that is required, and they can always scale back to move forward. I think it would be prudent after this evening's meeting. I think that we can reach out to Mr. Ayotte from New Hampshire DOT and get some of these additional questions and guidance from them.
So we have, and I think you're in the CIP, Linda, we put in for 2026 for our CIP request, and this obviously sort of came out of nowhere. We sandwiched it in here because we knew we've got to carry something. It doesn't want to be a complete surprise. So we have it earmarked for 2026 for our work of the 1.4 million. But
Okay, so a warrant article will not be coming forward in 2025, it's 2026. In about a year for us to move the poles, that means the earliest the state can do any construction is 2027.
I think we kind of threw that as an arbitrary, 2027 would be, but that's to the best knowledge I have at this time. I think that's still fluid.
Yeah, it was my understanding 27, 28 was what they were
27,
looking at for
28.
construction. Is that correct, Steve?
So maybe just, if I could, so we capture, at least for me, the infrastructure side of this is going to be relocation of poles. Your proposal is once. DOT owes us an answer as to whether they like that idea. We wait anxiously for that, and we get that. And if they say, yeah, that makes sense, then we can proceed to the next set of decisions, which is the construction sequence, which begins with going up and down and figuring out where you're going to plant those little things, and then who's going to have to give up land, or temporarily or permanently, who's going to have to give up land. That's not in the 1.4 million bucks. That legal stuff is going to probably be additive to that.
There'll be some of that because we'll have to work
well, you have to have somebody, do construction easements or maybe permanent easements or something.
We have carried money in the estimate I have there. We have carried money for some easements and some of that work.
I'm just trying to check off the
layout.
boxes, checking off the boxes.
So
Linda
you-
made a very good point about, while you're doing your magic, the infrastructure, the other infrastructure people, the fiber people, they're going to be down the street, and they're going to, I really like to know where they're going to need one lane of traffic while they're doing their work too, because that's going to add time to the construction schedule. You said months, it could be many months. So we probably want to know that at some point, not now, but at some point. Since I was the person who read the tree issue, we really need to understand what we're taking down and what we're going to put back and who's going to pay for that. Once we figure out what we're going to do, so it doesn't look like we've just scarred off the land and done all that kind of fun stuff.
And we have a budget amount carried for tree removal in that 1.4,
What about replacement?
No.
not replacement.
Okay, all right. So only
You
one half of
folks-
the equation.
you folks are replacement.
Us, we have to go figure that out. Right? I like that, you didn't ask the right question. Now, I want to understand what's going to cost to take them down. I want to know what it's going to cost to put them back.
Yeah.
And so that we don't get into a situation where it kind of slips off the budget onto the floor and, and that happens. So those are the ones I think are important. It's just and then if we come back and we learn from DOT that they just say, listen, we can't handle this, we have to have 2 lanes of traffic, which may be the pushback. We just need to know all of that. So I close this, at least for me, I close this as saying good information, probably a little more than $1.4 million, probably longer than a couple of months to relocate this infrastructure, probably going to have a lot of heartburn with people giving up land, and those issues have to get all kind of sorted and dealt with in the right time, once DOT says,
Yeah.
we're okay with what you want to do.
Right, and that's
Okay,
kind of
I'm
where
good.
I'm at.
Thanks.
Brian? No, you don't want to?
That was way more than enough.
Okay, I guess the other thing is, as we take notes here, we should take a look at and start budgeting for replacement of trees. Yeah. This is going to be a pretty big price tag, and I think as we look at our CIP and stuff, it would be better to put more money in something like that over a number of years than to try to do it on one. The other thing is we probably should check to see, Barry said he had some money in this for easements, but we also should keep an eye on, we might need more in terms of our legal expense as we put the budget. It looks like it's going to be 2026 budget together. Does anybody else have any questions for Barry?
So just
Yep.
a couple of items that Barry may want to help us clarify. I believe it was in the CIP document, it was $50,000 for legal and easement work. Additionally, in the CIP proposal, Barry, you carried the $1.4 million as a bond, correct?
I did, because I kind of used that $1 million threshold of when we bond and when we fund out of current funding. That's sort of been my cutoff point. And if we have to move twice, it's not going to double the price, but it's going to be $2 million plus if we have to relocate twice. So, yeah, for now, I have it in there as a bond.
Can we bond moving of poles?
Yeah, it's going to be bond.
It's not a capital item.
Well, it'd be no different than doing our
Phase 6.
reconstructive projects, our conversion projects.
Okay.
In fact, it basically duplicates that.
Okay.
And Barry, where would that be carried? Would that be carried through municipal electric, or would you anticipate that being a taxpayer bond?
I doubt that would be extremely popular. I can foresee everyone agreeing that it's a municipal electric bond.
Just to
I
clarify.
think it might be a tough sell to try to get this thing done if we all decide that's the route we want to go. I mean, my personal perspective is we're going to have to bite the bullet sometime with that. Either that or we just let it stay the way it is for forever. And as much as I hate the idea of having to do all this relocation and whatnot, I still think now's the time to do it. I mean, so I know there's a lot of factors you folks are going to have to deal with, but I mean,
Good job,
it's
Greg.
just my 2 cents. So,
Yeah, good job.
all right. Anything else?
Any other selectmen questions for him? Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
That gave us an outline,
want this,
an idea of what moving the power lines are like. And I guess the other question the Board of Selectmen needs to give some thought about is, do we want to push back on having 2 lanes of traffic during all the construction? Or do we feel we're okay with it? I'm assuming, and we should get some kind of a diagram, if we have 3 lanes of traffic, how much space that's going to take and what we're going to lose with them doing that. Well, I mean, at some point, we need to have some kind of an idea when they lay out that corridor, exactly what the width is going to be. Are we going to lose sidewalks? How we got kids who use it to go to and from school. What is the width, and what are we going to lose for them to make 3 lanes of traffic?
Linda, at the last meeting when they were here, they actually said that they may have been capable of not having to have all the poles moved, they said, in order to keep 2-lane traffic. They said that they could scale back, maybe move a few poles, this is what they told us, and said that they could shift the road back and forth in different areas so that a good portion of the road would be 2 lanes and certain portions when they were working would be 1 lane.
I guess that's kind of what I'm talking about here is they made some of those comments. What exactly, they should be able to give us some kind of a diagram on what they're proposing. Brad?
Yeah, I think that we should definitely question them on that. I think if we push on them, some that we want to keep not to do the 2-lane open traffic all the time, and then they can come back to us with what their options would be, how it would be approached and stuff like that. I don't think they're going to do it unless we push back on them, say we don't want to go to this expense of building an extra lane in there just to keep 2 lanes going. I think it would take the pushback from us on that to get them to respond and come back with some alternative approaches to how they want to do this.
Agreed, and I believe that the citizens in town, knowing what the road will look like when it's finished and being comfortable with how it looks now, I think they would be, very patient with us on times that traffic became a little congested. Because they're going to understand that the final product is going to be something that's aesthetically appealing, keeps the character of the town, keeps our thoroughway coming into the town looking the way it has, and keeping it more rural looking.
I agree with you, Brian. And I was looking at a statement we made in our document or our report sent to New Hampshire DOT, and it says, Wolfeboro is defined by its traditional New England character and presence of Lake Winnipesaukee and Lake Wentworth. Scenic vistas such as the existing Pickering Corner intersection of Route 109 and 28 defines the gateway into our village core. And I think that's the piece that people care about. And I think trying to find this all out is helping us see and help them understand that maybe 1 lane of traffic at times will keep that look. Does anybody have any other comments? So if I'm correct, I hear that we want to push back and get a better understanding whether we can not always have 2-way traffic.
Absolutely.
Is that correct? Everybody in agreement on that one? Okay. I guess the other issue, do we want to look at each of these intersections and talk about whether we want one of the options? Or we talked about writing some warrant articles for the 2025 warrant. And I want to get a sense of the board on whether we want to kind of look at those intersections and try to define whether we want to come down to 1 or 2, whether we want to leave it all open, and whether we want to write some warrant articles to get some direction from more citizens.
Linda?
Brian?
So I've talked to probably now about 500 people in town. I've asked everybody I can ask. And I've gotten a response. The most unliked response is having stoplights put at the two intersections. The second most unfavorable response I've gotten was rotaries. And then the majority of people that I've talked to have said, build it in kind, in place, but make it function better. That would be slightly widening the two areas of concern and having dedicated on and off lanes to move traffic a little bit more slowly, comfortably, safely, a lot of different things. So what I would like to do or like to propose to the rest of the board is if we had 2 warrant articles, one for each intersection, and they said, would the citizens of Wolfeboro be in favor of keeping the road in kind with a slight expansion at the McManus Road intersection? Or would they like to have a roundabout at that intersection? And you would vote yes to keep the road as it is with just a slight expansion, and you would vote no if you wanted to have a rotary. And do that for both intersections to give the citizens the option of do they want each of these intersections independently to just be expanded in width and in direction of lanes, or to have rotaries put in their place. It's going to change the appearance and the traffic flow for years. The 2- and 1-lane traffic is going to be problematic, and there are people that are going to be frustrated with it. And I don't mind talking to people and apologizing for the inconvenience that we're causing them, and doing the best we can to keep the traffic moving for a 2-year project, 1 to 2 years. That's something that's short term. This will be long term if we install rotaries and they don't work, because I've done research that's found out that 25% or more of rotaries are removed after they're installed because they don't operate as they thought were planned. I also think that once they're there, there could be people that for years and years and years are frustrated by them. So I believe that we should let the citizens in town vote how each of their intersections on their artery coming into the town, our welcoming road, look for the next 25, 50 years.
Yep. Brad?
Yeah, I think if you put that into the warrant articles, the issue I see is that people who are going to envision, say, an enhanced lane improvement versus a rotary, the people aren't going to understand that the enhanced lanes, to be able to stack the cars in there, is going to take up more property on the Brewster side. It's going to be more impactful. You're going to lose more parking spaces along that area too, across from the pavilion and, along by the church there and stuff. They've shown that in some of their earlier plans. The problem is that if there's if the 500 people that you've talked to, Brian, I know there haven't been 500 people at the meetings here to see the DOT presentations and stuff, so that's a concern I have, that they're not going to be thinking or understanding what the full impact is going to be for the different choices there. Because we've seen in some of the later meetings, people have come in and say, well, this is the first we've heard about it. Well, we've been having meetings on this for over 2 years now, when we've been hearing some of these, newer ones coming into us, objecting to the roundabout or, whatever we're doing on the road there. So that's a concern I have there on that is we're going to have a very large education process in this if we decide to go with warrant articles and stuff to make sure people understand and word gets out there as to what the impacts would be for everybody on that. So that's just a concern I got on doing it that way. I agree, with that, that the lights, I think, would be probably the worst choice to have. But I'm a strong believer in the roundabouts. I've seen them put in various places. There are different uses in different areas. This one here, I think, would really work well, and the safety improvements you'd get for pedestrians and everything there would be a large improvement on what we have there now. So that's just, my opinion on that part of it anyway. So I'll rest it there.
Paul, did I see your hand?
Yeah, please. I'm sorry for doing this. I guess I was confused by your question about should we do some warrants. What kind of hypothetically did you have in your mind?
Well, I did one, and I will go back to where Brad is. I would base it on a diagram that we have already from New Hampshire DOT. We'd know how many parking spaces and stuff, and I would do something like, is your first choice for the intersection of Route 28 and 1 and 9, otherwise known as Pickering Corner, a midi roundabout, and then you do one for any hand. And then we would be able to have, as you said, Brad, we'd have a picture and we'd be able to list the pros and cons that we have done in our study. So I would be more specific than what Brian was talking about.
I'm kind of there. I kind of side a bit with Brad, and having sat through these more than a handful of years ago. There's a lot of work here. There's a lot of feelings about whether we should or shouldn't have roundabouts, consequences of those, parking spaces, relocation of property, all that kind of fun stuff. And I think that, no disrespect to Brian's point, Brian is trying to get a sense of the aesthetics and what people really want, but I think we need to put something with some degree of concreteness in front of them and say that or no. And that would be I would like to do that with a little bit more substance. But then again, I just asked that might blow up Barry's great ideas about messing around with the polls. So we just got to get all this stuff kind of lined up. But if we're in the business or in the model of saying Pickering Corner, you have three options, and they all have puts and takes. Which one of those do you think makes good sense? I'd be okay with doing that. I'd be okay with that.
Dave?
I think the last time the state was here was interesting, and that they finally did say that we have a traffic problem for 2 months out of the year.
Right.
And they said that neither a roundabout or whatever they want to do at Pickering Corner is going to solve that problem.
That's correct.
I think they've made that very clear.
Right.
That was one thing. I agree with Brian, and I agree with Brad as well. But I think that the idea of a warrant article makes more sense. Then we'll get a direct ideas from the public as far as what they would like to see. Rather than Brian saying, well, he talked to 500 people and they said this. We don't have any concrete information for that, realistically.
That's why
I think that the warrant article idea makes a lot of sense to me. As far as what Barry presented tonight, we haven't heard anything from the state yet, so we have no idea what they're thinking. So his stuff is saying, okay, we move it once. That makes most sense, and I assume the state might think the same way. So as far as that's concerned, we don't know yet. So I have no idea what's going to go on with the power stuff yet. And I don't think Barry does, so we don't, certainly. He hasn't given us any information on that because he doesn't have any. So, but I think the idea of the warrant article makes sense. Brad and I have had many discussions about rotaries and leaving it the way it is. We disagree. He likes rotaries, I don't. And that's fine. I mean, that's the way it works. So if the public says that they want to have the layout the way it's been for 100 years, then that's the way we should move towards that idea rather than
all of our own ideas, and we all have them. So I like the idea of the warrant article.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the idea of the warrant article. I just quickly wrote something down to have an idea. Obviously, we're going to have to be more specific, and I'd like to have a diagram that goes with it. I think we have a large education piece in terms of what we are able to get out there. And Jim, you said the simulations are up on the New Hampshire DOT. One of the things that I found very helpful was to go out onto their website and spend some time looking at those simulations, because it shows you how the cars are going to flow in and out of the roundabout, how they're going to go in and out of the enhanced striping. And I think there is also a minimum build for that Pickering corner. So those are things. I would have had some feedback about whether you really need to do Pleasant Valley Road, whether we want to tackle that, whether we want to do maybe 3 or 4 asking different questions about the intersections. So we will need to spend some time devising those warrant articles. Does anybody else have any questions about the warrant articles? And we're in agreement. We're going to go through and do warrant articles, and we're going to word them, and we'll work on those over the next couple of meetings. If anybody wants to draw up some possibilities, maybe that's the best, and then we can combine. Usually when we put our heads together, we do better. The other question I had, and I talked to Brad about it, exactly what the corridor is going to look at, starting below Pleasant Valley Road, coming all the way into Pickering Corner. And I thought we had a look of a corridor, and we were going to have sidewalks on both sides and curbing and 2 bike lanes and the road. And when you look, and I had to take a magnifying glass out, and Brad and I were trying to do it, that there is a section where we don't have sidewalks, that there looks like they're not planning to add sidewalks. So I'm not sure what the whole corridor is going to look like. And I think Barry showed us that the sidewalks, that if you're down by the Children's Center, that are probably about 6 feet off the road, are going to come up right next to the road if that corridor is designed the way I think I saw through the diagrams. And I guess we need to talk and find out whether there's going to be 2 sidewalks, 2 bike lanes through the corridor, because I think that's important to know that. And I'm not sure there's going to be sidewalks on both sides and bike lanes on both sides.
Yeah, that's a good catch. That actually got teed up, I think, last time we visited with them, or maybe 2 times ago, that the sidewalk, if there was to be a sidewalk, was moving closer to traffic, and that the grass plots were starting to get, and I think several of us pushed back and said that that's probably not a smart model. Even if there's a bike lane out there, it's not a smart model. So good catch. We probably need to get clarity on that.
I think when we talked about it, they said that it would be our discretion whether or not we left a small green space between the road and the sidewalk, or if we put the sidewalk close to the street. They said that we could have input on that in different locations.
And I'll take an issue with the small green space. Take a look up right after the high school, heading, and it's in front of the golf course property. You'll see that there's probably about 12 inches that's been filled in with blacktop because it was impossible to grow and to deal with that. So either they're back far enough that you really can have a nice green space, or don't even try to put that in.
Salt, sand, dirt.
It's just, it didn't work at all. So we've tried that one, so we can eliminate that. Is there anything else that somebody would like to bring up and talk about here? Does everybody have any more information that they'd like to gather? Okay.
My only other question would be to DOT. We talked about multiple sizes of roundabouts. We haven't asked them for the enhanced striping. Can it be modified to even make it slimmer than it is? Meaning, if they say, when they come to us with a project, they come to us with the biggest one that they're going to do. Can we actually have that scaled down slightly to take up less parking spaces and less property?
They gave us 3 for Pickering Corner. They gave us the compact, and it's the mini roundabout. Then the next one was a minimum build, which was restore the existing intersection. And the third one was enhanced striping, more forward. So they have pictures of those 3.
Yeah. So there is an option in some places to do, I mean, maybe we do enhanced striping at McManus and maybe we do a minimal build at Pickering. Maybe it goes the reverse way. We don't have to follow one thing. We don't have to have roundabouts in both. We don't have to have this enhanced striping in both. This is a mix and match system. We can do whatever works best and whatever the citizens of the town want.
I think without a doubt, Brian. And I was just looking, I was able to print, and it shows you where you would go into all the roundabouts, because one of the questions people had was, how do you get in and out of the gas station? Does the gas station have enough space to get their deliveries?
Service deliveries,
And that, if you look at those simulations, you can see that. So go to that, and we should try, and the connection is on the town website. That's what you were showing us earlier, Jim. But they will not give us their simulations so that we can...
They're right there.
Ask and you shall receive. Boom.
Okay.
So they are on
Those
that
little
link.
ants running across
You
the
just follow that link through the Public Works Department, and there's Pickering Corner simulation and McManus Road simulation.
So if we hold a public hearing to inform the public, can you just hit one box and have that blown up?
I can ask them if they can break that out for us. I do not have the ability to extract individual simulations from this, but I can ask.
Doesn't that traffic flow just look so calm?
Yes.
It's just like the way it really is, right?
Count the number of cars in each simulation, make sure they're the same number. That's what I ask people to do.
So we should have them simulate I guess it is about 7 o'clock on a weekday, as everybody's coming into the school, what that will look like. Also, probably the 4th of July weekend at that corner, and that would tell us how bad it's going to act. Is there anything else? Any board members? If not, I will ask for public comment. Board members, is anybody want to give us public comment at this particular time? Yep.
We have.
Just state your name for the record.
Good evening, Jeb Bradley. It sounds like in listening to this discussion, you have a lot more questions than answers. So I'm not going to be here forever, but obviously, hopefully, John will and Mark McConkey, who probably knows more about these transportation projects than anybody in Concord in the legislature. I think if you want to, and Mark is chair of the Public Works Committee, I should say that, but if you want to put a list of questions together, we have very good relationships with Commissioner Cass, and I think we could be helpful of that, especially if you're contemplating a question on a warrant article, and to try to get it done in a timely fashion. So I think all 3 of us are offering that for you tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. That will be helpful, and we should get some questions together for you, and let's see if we can get some of those questions answered. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to give us any public input?
Mark McConkey, I'll be real brief. So Public Works and Highways, we see these projects all the time, this debate on the table, what's best for your citizens and so forth. I'm hoping that what the senator has brought forward in getting you closer together with DOT to get questions answered. I don't want your project to slip out of of where it is, because getting it back into a 10-year plan can be very difficult. What I don't realize, I've known Periphery over a while, is you have a power company. Most other towns just don't have that. So when I sit here listening to that wonderful presentation by Barry, I'm set back by that because that's usually done by the utilities. But I want you to know that I'm here to help, and as was mentioned, Cass is very great at coming, but I think if you have questions, I think we can interact and help that. We've done it in Conway, we've done it plenty of places, so happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to give us public input?
Are we not pending? Okay. I'm not that tall. There we go. Bobby Budman, Wolfeboro. Just a couple things. Linda, if you guys could actually do more of the simulations, like you said, with possibly the school buses, because that's our biggest time frame. I'm wondering if adding to these simulations, if maybe we could get some drone footage during those busy times in the morning at around 7 o'clock a.m. when the school buses are coming in, if maybe we could get drone footage to add to that to see really what we're looking at. The bike lane, I know you mentioned it. I think on the last presentation that they had changed it to one bike lane just coming down one side of the road, I think we had talked about, but if we can make sure we get that bike lane in there. And then the other question I have is, when they do this work, are we going to make sure it's not in the summer months and it's in the off season? Can we dictate that at all?
We can always ask.
Okay, thanks.
You can always ask.
Anybody else?
And Blodgett, thank you for taking it to a warrant article. Not many of us in the room, not many of us knew about this meeting, so I think it's, us users could be very helpful in the decision-making process, as Dave said. Thank you.
Anybody else like to give us any public input? Hearing and seeing none, board members, can I have a motion to go into non-public?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Dave?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.